Think exotic fruits have absolutely no place in your backyard? Well, this gardening masterclass is going to completely flip the script on what you can grow right here in Bulgaria. Today, we've put together a comprehensive explainer, pulling directly from expert agronomy sources to get you growing like a pro.
You might look at a gorgeous bright orange persimmon and think, oh, that's definitely a fragile tropical plant. But what if I told you a little secret? Certain varieties of this beautiful tree can actually survive brutal Bulgarian winters, handling temperatures all the way down to -25°C. Crazy, right? In fact, this crop actually needs that winter chill to give you a massive harvest.
Yep, we're talking about the persimmon. In Bulgarian, we know it as the heavenly apple. Botanically, it's called Diosperos, which translates from Greek to divine fire or food of the gods. It is an incredibly resilient, high-yielding fruit tree that is just practically tailor-made for the Bulgarian climate.
So here's our roadmap for today. We'll start with a quick introduction, dive into climate and varieties, walk through the exact planting steps, cover care and maintenance, talk about harvesting and all those amazing benefits, and wrap up with some common challenges and final tips. Section 1. A quick introduction and a bit of history. This exotic beauty was actually introduced to Bulgaria back in the mid-20th century. At first, it was pretty much restricted to southern Bulgaria and the Black Sea coast, but today, thanks to shifting climates and smarter variety selection, it's a completely viable option for most flat regions across the entire country.
Now here is one of the coolest concepts for us home gardeners, parthenocarpy. Sounds like a big fancy science word, but it basically means your tree can pump out massive, totally seedless fruits without needing another tree nearby for pollination. Sure, having a pollinator around will drastically boost your yield, but honestly, a single, solitary tree is perfectly capable of giving you a fantastic harvest all on its own.
Moving right along to Section 2, climate and varieties. Because, picking the right tree and the right rootstock is hands down the most critical step to guarantee success in your specific local microclimate.
Okay, the key takeaway here is understanding the big difference between astringent and non-astringent varieties, because this entirely dictates how and when you actually eat the fruit. Astringent persimmons are packed with tannins. You absolutely must wait until they are completely soft, literally like jelly, before you take a bite. On the flip side, non-astringent varieties have no tannins. You can just pick them off the tree and crunch right into them while they're still hard, exactly like an apple.
Let's look at some of the absolute best options for Bulgaria. The Costata variety, that's your ultimate insurance policy against extreme cold, easily surviving down to -25 degrees. Then you've got Giro and Fuyu. These are non-astringent, meaning you get that sweet, crisp crunch right away without the wait. And if you're looking for huge fruits and high market value, the Spanish Rojo Brialde is incredible, provided your local temperatures don't consistently drop below -18.
But hey, the variety is really only half the equation. Your soil type actually dictates your rootstock. The Caucasian rootstock, which is the most common one we see here, is super cold hardy, but it absolutely despises wet feet. So if you're working with heavy, poorly draining clay soil, you'll want a tree grafted onto an American rootstock. Just keep in mind, with the American rootstock, you have to manage a few more root suckers popping up.
All right, Section 3. Planting steps. How you put this baby in the ground literally determines whether it's going to thrive and produce fruit for the next several decades. No pressure, right?
The experts are super clear on this process. First up, dig a hole about 50 to 80 centimeters deep. Throw a mix of well-aged manure, topsoil, and a bit of sand for drainage right into the bottom. This part is crucial. Make sure the graft union sits about 3 to 5 centimeters above the ground level. Finally, soak it, and I mean really soak it, with 15 to 50 liters of water to settle the soil around the roots. Pro tip, aim for fall planting in the warmer southern regions, but if you're up north, definitely plant in the spring to protect those fragile young roots from freezing.
Now, I need to emphasize a golden rule here. Under no circumstances should you ever use fresh manure or ammonium nitrate when you're first planting. Doing that will instantly burn those delicate little root hairs and it will kill your young tree. Always buffer the roots with a protective layer of clean soil.
Moving into Section 4, care and maintenance. Once your tree is safely tucked into the ground, you need to set up a consistent routine to really unlock that massive yield persimmons are so famous for.
Looking at the yearly cycle, you'll notice something pretty awesome. Persimmons bloom incredibly late, usually not until May or June. This is brilliant because it naturally protects the flowers from those infamous late spring frosts we get in Bulgaria. But listen closely, summer watering is absolutely non-negotiable. If you let that soil dry out completely, the tree will just drop its fruit out of stress and whatever is left will be tiny.
While they are generally super tough trees, you do need to keep an eye out for a few common pests. Scale insects, for example, can be knocked out organically with a simple 3% winter oil spray. And here's a neat trick. Just taking the time to carefully scrape the old, rough bark off the trunk during winter can naturally remove overwintering persimmon moth larvae. Easy and organic.
Section 5. Harvesting and benefits. This is the best part, right? Reaping the ultimate reward. Harvest usually kicks off in late October and November. By then, the tree has dropped all its leaves, and it just looks like it's covered in these bright, glowing golden ornaments.
Here's a massive pro tip from the growers. Never just yank the fruit off the branch. Always use scissors to snip the stem flush against the calyx or the leafy part at the top. If you leave a long stem attached, it's just going to puncture the other persimmons when you stack them in a crate. And to make them last as long as possible, store them somewhere dark and cool, ideally right around 1 to 2 degrees Celsius.
The health payoffs of eating these are honestly off the charts. They are absolutely loaded with iodine, which is fantastic for thyroid health, and packed with magnesium to help fight anemia. And get this, even though they taste incredibly sweet, those sugars are mostly fructose. This actually makes them a surprisingly safe treat for diabetics when eaten in moderation. Oh, and they are basically a super dose of vitamin C and beta-carotene.
Finally, Section 6, Challenges and Final Tips. Before you run out to grab a shovel, there's one major structural challenge we have to talk about, something you'll definitely face once your tree really gets going.
Here's the deal. A mature tree can pump out anywhere from 200 to 300 kilograms of fruit in a single season. But persimmon wood is notoriously brittle. Those heavy fruit-loaded branches will literally snap right off under their own weight in the fall if you don't help them out. You absolutely must provide mechanical support, like sturdy wooden props, to keep your tree intact.
Now, as responsible gardeners, please keep this in mind. This explainer gives you the best overarching practices from agronomy experts, but every single region in Bulgaria has its own unique soil and microclimate. So it never hurts to reach out to local agricultural extensions or agronomists for advice that is custom-tailored to your own backyard.
Armed with all the knowledge from today's masterclass, you are totally ready to transform your garden. So, the only question left is, when are you planting your very own divine fire to taste the food of the gods for yourself? Get out there and start growing.